Right. I want you to picture a race, a marathon. For years, every runner has been bunched up in a pack, all moving at roughly the same pace, all jostling for the same amount of space, all trying to be heard over the noise of everyone else. It's crowded, it's frustrating, and no matter how hard you train, it feels almost impossible to break away. And then, suddenly, the front runners stumble. The ones everyone was following. The ones who set the pace. The ones who had the biggest names, the most powerful connections, the most column inches. They trip over their own feet. They get pulled from the race. They're escorted off the track in disgrace. And all at once, the road in front of you is wide open. There is clear air. There is space to run. There is a gap, a real, genuine strategic gap, and it has your name written all over it. That is where we are right now. And I need you to hear this clearly. This is not a crisis. This is a starting point. This month, the arrests of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Lord Peter Mandelson on suspicion of alleged misconduct in public office didn't just create a political scandal. They didn't just dominate the news cycle. They created something far more significant for you and your organization. They created a strategic opportunity, a once in a generation chance for a certain kind of charity, a certain kind of leader to break away from the pack and win. Welcome to the Strategic Health Check. I'm Jose Gain, ethical fundraising growth strategist, founder of Gaign Strategic Fundraising, and the person who has been saying for years that the UK's small and mid sized health charities are the most underestimated, underfunded, and undervalued organizations in this country. And today I'm saying something different. Today I'm saying you are also the most strategically positioned organizations in the country right now, in this moment. Today we are not talking about the cost of the UK's trust crisis. We are talking about how to profit from it. We are talking about how to turn this misconduct moment into your single greatest competitive advantage. Forget defense. This is about offense. This is about winning the race for trust. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Let's go. For the last decade, the operating environment for health charities has been defined by one word: scarcity. Scarcity of funds, scarcity of attention, scarcity of trust. We have all been fighting for the same small pool of resources, the same limited donor attention, the same shrinking grant budgets. But the events of the last few weeks have fundamentally shifted the market dynamics. And I want you to understand why. The high profile arrests for alleged misconduct in public office, and I'm talking about figures at the very top of British public life, have created what I call the great trust vacuum. And in any market, a vacuum doesn't stay empty for long. Something always rushes in to fill it. Think about it from the perspective of your donors, your grant makers, your corporate partners, your legacy prospects. These are people who have spent years placing their trust in institutions, in government, in politics, in the establishment. And right now, those institutions are letting them down publicly, dramatically, in a way that is very hard to ignore. People are looking for somewhere to place their belief. They are actively searching for organizations that are credible, reliable, and genuinely mission driven. They are, in marketing terms, highly qualified leads for trust. And they are available right now to the first organization that can credibly say, we are not them. Now, the Charity Commission's own research from 2025 tells us something remarkable. Charities are already the second most trusted institution in the UK, behind only doctors. 57% of the public holds high trust in us. That is our starting position. That is our market share before we've done anything differently. But here is where it gets really interesting. That same research tells us exactly what drives that trust. The number one factor, cited by 53% of the public, is knowing that most of the money raised goes directly to the cause. Not brand recognition, not celebrity patrons, not a glossy website. Financial transparency, the boring, unglamorous, utterly powerful act of showing people where the money goes. So let me put this together for you because I think it's genuinely exciting. You have a public that is actively looking for trustworthy organizations. You have clear, research backed data on what makes an organization trustworthy. And you are already operating in the second most trusted sector in the country. This is not a crisis. This is a product market fit waiting to happen. The failure of the old guard, the politicians, the public figures, the establishment players who believed the rules didn't apply to them is not a burden for us to carry. It is our fuel for our growth. Every headline about misconduct creates more demand for the very thing we are uniquely positioned to supply: demonstrable integrity. The question is, are you set up to supply it? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most charities will miss this moment entirely. Not because they don't care, not because their leaders aren't smart, but because of a very human tendency that I see again and again in this sector: the instinct to hunker down. When a scandal hits the headlines, most organizations go into defensive mode. They issue cautious statements. They tell their teams to avoid the topic. They wait for the storm to pass. They treat the news cycle like bad weather, something to endure, not something to respond to strategically. And while they're hunkering down, the window closes. The opportunity passes. The donors who are looking for a safe harbor find somewhere else to dock. I want to tell you about a concept from the world of competitive strategy. April Dunford, one of the sharpest positioning thinkers alive today, talks about the idea of competitive context, the idea that your product or service is never evaluated in isolation. It is always evaluated relative to the alternatives. And the alternatives right now are looking very, very bad. When a donor is deciding where to place their trust, they are not just thinking about your charity in isolation. They are thinking about it in the context of everything else we've seen this month: the arrests, the headlines, the sense that powerful people have been operating without accountability. Your charity, in that context, has an extraordinary opportunity to stand out, not by being flashy or clever, but simply by being visibly, provably different. This is what Seth Godin calls the minimum viable audience. The idea that you don't need to appeal to everyone. You need to find the people who are already looking for what you offer and give them a reason to choose you. Right now, there is a significant and growing audience of donors, grant makers, and corporate partners who are specifically looking for organizations that are clean, transparent, and trustworthy. That is your minimum viable audience, and they are actively looking for you. But, and this is the critical part, they will only find you if you make yourself findable, if you make your integrity visible, if you stop treating transparency as a compliance exercise and start treating it as a marketing strategy. Let me give you a real world example of what I mean. Think about what happened after the Oxfam safeguarding scandal in 2018. The sector was rocked, donations dropped, trust fell. But, and this is the part that doesn't get talked about enough, a number of smaller, less well known charities saw a significant increase in donations in the months that followed. Why? Because they were proactive. They reached out to their donors. They published clear statements about their safeguarding policies. They made their governance visible. They said, in effect, we are not Oxfam. Here is the proof. And donors responded. That is the misconduct moment playbook. And I'm going to walk you through it right now. Right, let's get into the actual strategy. Because after all, this is the strategic health check, and we don't just diagnose, we prescribe. Here are the three moves that will win you the trust race. Move one: become radically, unapologetically transparent. I want to challenge something that I hear a lot in the sector: the idea that transparency is a risk, that showing your costs makes you look inefficient, that publishing your governance documents opens you up to criticism, that being open about your challenges makes you look weak. I want to flip that completely. Transparency is not a risk. Opacity is a risk. And in the current climate, opacity is a catastrophic risk. The Charity Commission's research is unambiguous. The number one driver of public trust is knowing where the money goes. So make it easy to know. your financial breakdown on your homepage, not buried in a PDF annual report that nobody reads, but on your homepage in plain English, with context, with a clear explanation of why your costs are what they are. And you can go further. Publish your trustee expenses. Publish your CEO pay ratio. Publish your overhead percentage. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because you are proud of how you operate. Because you have nothing to hide. And because the act of publishing it voluntarily and proactively sends a signal that is worth more than any marketing campaign you could ever run. I started my career as a door to door fundraiser. I broke records in that role, and I'll tell you what I learned. The moment you stop trying to hide anything and just tell people the truth about what you do and why it matters, everything changes. The conversation shifts. The trust arrives. The yes comes faster. Transparency is not weakness, it is the most powerful sales tool you have. Now, move two, decouple your brand from any single individual. This is the strategic move that most charities are most reluctant to make, and it is the one that matters most right now. The alleged misconduct arrests have reminded us of something important. Individuals are liabilities, not because people are inherently untrustworthy. Most people are wonderful, but because any individual, no matter how prominent, how respected, or how well connected, can become a liability overnight. We have seen it happen to figures who seemed utterly untouchable. And when they fall, they take everything associated with them down with them. So I want you to do a very honest audit of your brand. Ask yourself, if I remove the name and face of our most prominent patron, trustee, or spokesperson from our communications tomorrow, would our fundraising still work? Would our donors still give? Would our grant applications still be compelling? If the answer is no, if your brand is built around a person rather than a mission, you have a structural vulnerability that needs to be addressed. Not eventually, but right now. The mission is your brand. The mission is your insurance policy. The mission is what donors give to, what volunteers show up for, what commissioners fund. And the mission doesn't get arrested. The mission doesn't have a PR crisis. The mission doesn't need a lawyer. Build your communications around the people you serve, not the people who serve you. Lead with patient stories, community impact, and measurable outcomes. Make your cause so vivid and so compelling that no single individual's departure could ever threaten it. This is what April Dunford would call your positioning statement, the clear, differentiated articulation of what you do, who you do it for, and why it matters. And it should be built on the bedrock of your mission, not the stardust of a patron. Move three, build a culture where truth can travel. This is the move that most leaders find the most uncomfortable because it requires the most personal courage. But it is also the move that creates the most durable competitive advantage. The alleged misconduct arrests we've seen this week share a common thread. In every case, there were people around these individuals who knew or suspected that something was wrong. And in every case, the culture made it too dangerous, too costly, or too futile to say so. The silence was not accidental, it was structural. The Charity Commission's whistleblowing data from 2024 to 2025 is striking. Reports of governance failures doubled in 2 years, from 152 to 303 reports. That number tells two stories simultaneously. It tells us that more people are finding the courage to speak up, but it also tells us that there are hundreds of organizations out there where governance is failing and the culture is suppressing the truth. I want you to think about your organization, not your governance documents, but your actual culture. If a member of your team discovered that a senior figure was misusing resources or making decisions that benefited themselves rather than the mission, would they feel safe reporting it? Would they know how? Would they trust that something would actually happen? If there is any doubt in your mind, that doubt is your action point. Create a whistleblowing culture that is genuinely safe to use. Not a policy that lives in a drawer, a culture that is actively modeled by leadership, regularly communicated to staff, and backed by a clear, confidential reporting route. Because the organizations that catch problems early before they become scandals are the ones that survive and thrive. The ones that suppress dissent are the ones that end up on the front page. And here is the strategic upside that nobody talks about. A culture where truth can travel is also a culture where innovation can travel, where good ideas bubble up from the front line, where problems get solved before they become crises, where people bring their whole selves to work because they know they will be heard. That is not just good governance, that is a competitive advantage. I want to take a moment to zoom out because I think there is a deeper opportunity here that we haven't talked about yet. Last year, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Nolan Principles, the seven principles of public life established by Lord Nolan in 1995. They are selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. These principles were created in response to a wave of political scandals in the 1990s. Sound familiar? They were the establishment's attempt to codify what ethical public service actually looks like. And for 30 years, they have been the benchmark for governance in the public and charitable sectors. But here is what I want you to consider. Most organizations treat the Nolan Principles as a compliance framework, a checklist, something to reference in a governance document and then put back on the shelf. And that is a colossal waste of one of the most powerful positioning tools available to you. What if you treated the Nolan principles not as a compliance framework, but as a growth strategy? What if you published publicly and proudly a statement of how your organization embodies each of the seven principles? Not in corporate language, in real, human, specific terms. Not we are committed to integrity, but here is what integrity looks like in our organization. Here is how we make decisions. Here is how we handle conflicts of interest. Here is what happens when someone raises a concern. What if your annual report was structured around the Nolan principles, with concrete evidence of how you lived each one in the past year? What if your trustee recruitment process explicitly assessed candidates against these principles and you established and published the fact that you do? This is what I mean by integrity by design. It is the deliberate, strategic, public embedding of ethical standards into every aspect of how you operate and how you communicate. It is the difference between being trustworthy and being visibly trustworthy. And in the current climate, visibility is everything. The new Public Office Accountability Bill, the Hillsborough Law, is going to make much of this mandatory for public bodies. It introduces a statutory duty of candor, requires codes of conduct based on the Nolan principles, and establishes clear whistleblowing procedures. The direction of travel is clear. Accountability is becoming the law of the land. The charities that get ahead of this, that build accountability into their DNA before they're required to, will not just be compliant, they will be leaders. They will be the organizations that other organizations look to as examples. They will be the ones that donors, funders, and partners actively seek out. That is the misconduct moment opportunity, and it is available to you right now. So every episode of the Strategic Health Check ends with homework, because insight without action is just entertainment. And you're not here to be entertained. You are here to build something extraordinary. So here's your homework for this week. I'm calling it the Trust Race Audit. And I want you to complete it before the end of the week. Not next month, not when things calm down. This week, while the moment is live, while the opportunity is real, while the gap is open. I want you to sit down with a blank piece of paper or a fresh document, whatever works for you, and honestly answer these 5 questions. Question 1. If a donor visited our website right now, how quickly and easily could they find out exactly how we spend our money? Not our annual report, our actual financial breakdown in plain English on a page they can find in under 2 minutes. If the answer is they can't, that is your first action point. Question 2. Is our brand built around our mission or around an individual? If our most prominent patron, trustee, or spokesperson were to step down tomorrow For any reason, would our fundraising still work? If the answer is no, that is your second action point. Question 3. Does our organization have a genuinely safe, genuinely used whistleblowing culture? Not a policy, a culture. When did someone last use it? Do people know it exists? Do they trust it? If you're not sure, that's your third action point. Question 4. Can we articulate in one clear sentence what makes our organization demonstrably different from others in our space? Not better, different. What is our positioning? What is the specific, provable thing that makes us the right choice for our donors and funders? If you can't answer this in one sentence, that's your fourth action point. Question 5. Are we actively communicating our integrity, or are we assuming people can see it? Are we publishing our governance standards? Are we sharing our financial transparency proactively? Are we telling the story of how we operate, not just what we do? If the answer is no, that's your fifth action point. 5 questions, honest answers, real actions. That is how you win the trust race. And if you want a more comprehensive framework to work through, I've developed the 10-point Gaign diagnosis, the integrity audit, a deep dive tool for health charity leaders that covers governance, health, financial transparency, brand positioning, and donor trust. You can download it completely free at gainstrategic.co.uk. Pop your email in and I'll send it straight to you. I want to leave you with this. The UK is going through a reckoning. The people who are supposed to model integrity, the people in the highest offices with the greatest responsibilities and the most public trust, have let us down. And the public knows it. They feel it. They are angry, they are disillusioned, and they are looking for something better. That something better is you. Not because you're perfect, not because your organization has never made a mistake, but because you chose a different path. You chose to dedicate your worth and work to a mission that is bigger than any individual. You chose to operate in service of people who need you, and you chose to do it with integrity, or at least with the genuine intention of integrity. The misconduct moment is not a burden, it's a mandate. It's the moment when the public, the donors, the grant makers, and the corporate partners are all asking the same question at the same time. Who can we actually trust? And the answer, if you do the work, if you make your integrity visible, if you build your brand on your mission and your transparency on your values, the answer is you. So go and do the homework, download the integrity audit, book a discovery call with me if you want to work through this together. There's a free one waiting for you at gainstrategic.co.uk. No pitch, no pressure, just a proper strategic conversation about how your organization can win this moment. And if today's episode has given you something useful, a new idea, a new perspective, a new sense of possibility, please share it with a colleague, because the more health charities who understand this opportunity, the better the sector becomes. And the better the sector becomes, the better the outcomes for the patients, the communities, and the families we all exist to serve. The misconduct headlines will fade, the names in the news will move on, but the trust you build this week, that compounds, that grows, that lasts. This is your moment. Don't waste it. I'm Jose Gaign. This has been the Strategic Health Check. Now, get back to work. Those patients are waiting.